want to say good evening to those of you that are joining us, not just in person, but also on our streaming devices. We welcome you into the fellowship of the First Baptist Church of Ensley. I am Dr. Tyree Anderson, the pastor of this church, and we have gathered in such a time as this as it pertains to life and death, literally. Because that is the purpose of our town hall on this evening. We want to welcome you and want to welcome those of you who have waited. We know that we are a few minutes behind, but due to accident of some kind on 5920, it delayed many people from getting here, but we are finally ready and live. The purpose of this town hall is to ensure that we know going to the polls who, not just who's running, but also why you need to vote for the right person. Absolutely critical, because if you put the wrong person in office, you're going to have to deal with the consequences that come with that. We already have a hard enough time watching what's taking place nationally. We ought to be quicker and more invested in what's taking place on the local level. And so tonight we're going to be introduced to one that we believe is able to help right the ship. That is Attorney Joy Travis. And so you'll get a chance to hear from her at the right time, but I want to offer prayer before we begin. Then we'll turn it over to our moderator for this town hall. Eternal and all-wise God, who knows everything, Lord, even before we ask. But Lord, our arrogance won't allow us to rest and say, you already know. We are going to ask anyway. Because your word declares that if we ask, touching and agreeing, then Lord, it will happen. We're praying on tonight, God, that you will allow us to hear information that will be critical to the day that we go to the polls and we elect Probate Court Judge to a position, dear God, that literally has life and death implications. We're asking right now that you will consecrate our time together. God, we know that we have been taken advantage of in probate court. We know that there are those who have used our pain for their pleasure and their promotion. But on tonight, God, we're asking that you will right the ship, that you will allow those who are actually qualified to run, that you would allow those who have a heart for the people to run. We're asking, God, that you will allow our time together to reflect your will, that questions that are raised will be answered to the greatest of clarity, that, Lord, your timing would be absolutely perfect. Because, Lord, as our ancestors reminded us, that you might not come when we want you. But, Lord, you are always on time. We now ask that you will bless voices that will come. Allow us, God, to hear, not just to hear, but to understand. And that way, God, will be able to help others make the right decision. We know, Lord, in this wicked land that wicked people desire high seats. Lord, we're asking that you would allow the humble to rise to positions to make the land safe and inhabitable for the people. Thank you for each pastor who's here tonight. Thank you for their confidence and faith in you. And in the process, dear God, of putting the right person in place. We thank you for Sister Joy Travis. Pray right now that you will crown her from the top of her head to the soles of her feet. God, you will use her in order that the work might be done. Help us now to make right decisions even in the most difficult times. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you. Now, in the hands of our moderator.
Good evening. All right, my name is Lady Wu, Dana Woodruff for some of you if you know me from church. In this capacity, I am Lady Wu. I am on V94.9 WATV every single day, even some Saturdays, but definitely Monday through Friday, and then again on Sundays for the Abby Award-winning show, formerly known as Vital. So in any capacity where there's information, education, things that we need to know, I'm there. I try to be there, and especially when people who need to be heard call. So thank you all for having me this evening. My first duty is to introduce the pastors. I'm going to assume as a pastor's daughter that the pastors are the men that are sitting on the front row. That's my assumption. Am I right? You're right. I knew it. So I'm going to come to you, and you tell us who you are and what church you represent. And if you'd like to have some short remarks, pastors, very short remarks, before we get very short remarks, we can do that as well. You say, no remarks, so just your name. Your name. You just preached yesterday, so you shouldn't have a lot to say today. So your name and your church. And we already met the pastor of this church here.
My name is Albert Brott Jr., pastor of Victory Missionary Baptist Church.
My name is Jeffrey Black, pastor of Mount Moriah Baptist Church, Adamsville.
Matthew Johnson, pastor of Mount Moriah Baptist Church, Pratt City.
Chris Stewart, pastor of Divine Faith, Gate City.
Perry Macon, pastor of First Baptist Church in Woodlawn.
Ramon Billingsley, pastor of Mount Carmel, North Birmingham.
All right. Thank you all so much for hosting us this evening. Oh, we have more pastors? Yes, sir. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you. If we would give our clergymen a round of applause for putting themselves in a space to host such a conversation. That is great. That is vital all in itself. A lot of people say do not mix church and state, but if people gather in church, people need to know what's happening in the state, in the city, and in wherever their probate may be. So we thank you all for putting this together. Now, the information that we've been waiting for, before we hear from the speaker, I have one question. Do we all think that we know what probate is about? No? Good. Good. Okay. So that means we have a lot to learn. So get your pens out, get your notes ready, and we are about to be helped and blessed with great information from our presenter of the evening, Attorney Joy L. Travis from Travis Law, LLC. Her law firm is located on the south side of Birmingham. She practices in the fields of probate, family, and criminal law. She's a public servant. I know this for a fact. I'm going to go ahead and give this personal piece because it is vital. I worked on Joy's campaign in undergrad at Alabama State University. She has been running since she could run, so this is not new. She is a part of several service organizations, the NAACP, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. She's very active with the ASU Alumni Association and also the Sierra Club. That's just probably to name a few. So she's working and she's looking to work for us. Tonight we are about to learn. Before we do this, we will pass the mic around, but I want to ask just a general question to get us going and to get Joy in the right direction of what you all want to hear about first. And I'm going to do that by asking someone to guess the number that I'm thinking. If you have a question, guess the number that I'm thinking. Always 10, because my birthday is 10/10. What question would you have for Attorney Travis? Amazing opening question. Amazing opening question, because I think that is something that we see in our communities where mom and dad had passed, and the oldest one got the house, but the youngest one want to stay, and it's on paper that hadn't been probated. So now tonight we will find out the answer to that and many more questions. You all put your hands together for our presenter, Attorney Joy Travis.
Thank you, Lady Wu. Thank you also to Pastor Dr. Anderson for allowing us to be here today. I am Attorney Joy Travis. I want to thank everybody for coming out today because this is a conversation that I'm excited to have, and I've been having since before I started running for Probate Judge. I've been having this conversation with churches and groups and family members because it's really important for us to understand what to do in life for what we need to do and prepare for our death. Okay. We also do have some note cards and some ink pens, so if people have questions, they can write them down. I don't want you to forget anything, but the first thing that I'm going to do is we're going to address the question that we just had, and I'm going to double back. The other thing as well to talk about probate, we're also going to briefly talk about voting in elections as well, because the probate judge is responsible for administering the elections for the county. And so on top of probate duties, election duties are the next thing that have to be addressed, and we need someone that's fair and honest and accountable in this position. So the question was, someone is living in a house that their parents had, and the house was left to the children. Do you need an attorney to transfer the ownership of that home? There are a couple of things that I'm going to start with for this. First of all, whenever someone passes away, their name should be taken off the deed, okay? So sometimes parents have a home and one person passes away and nothing's done. The deed just still has mom and dad's name on it. Typically, when someone passes away, you're opening up an estate to transfer any legal property, okay? So that could be a home, it could be a car, it can be bank accounts. But when you open out estate, the court is going to give you the authority to be able to make those decisions and take action on behalf of that estate. The estate is in the name of the deceased person. Anytime you go to court as an attorney, I'm going to always recommend that you have an attorney. I mean, that's just first and foremost. But I understand that sometimes it can be very intimidating and overwhelming to try to find an attorney. I would encourage people to first take a recommendation. This has happened to someone else that you know. They might not talk about it, but being able to talk to someone like a pastor or someone of the church or someone that is in the funeral home business, they would deal with this a lot. They would know who to tell you to go talk to, and sometimes you might just need a consultation. You might not need to hire an attorney or retain an attorney to help you with this. You just might need a consultation to know in which direction to go in. So the first thing I'm going to say is always, always identify someone that is barred and that does this type of work to help you with your legal matter. That's first. Because what I also see sometimes is people might ask a church member, well, I know they go to church with me, but they do personal injury. That might not have anything to do with what we're trying to do, right? And it's hard for attorneys to say no because we want to help, especially a church member. But if they don't do that type of work, you don't want them helping you with something they're not familiar with, okay? The second thing I'm going to suggest is everybody in this room that owns a home, you should have a copy of your deed. You should have a folder in your home with a copy of your deed, a copy of your driver's license, a copy of any of your life insurance policies, anything that you think your family is going to need to know once you pass away, okay? Now, don't wait and do this until I'm getting sick, it's time to get, no, you need to do it tomorrow because you never know when things are going to happen, okay? In addition to having those copies in a folder, you also need to have a will and a power of attorney. The power of attorney is for life. When someone passes away, that does not count anymore. The will is for death. In my office, when people come to me and they say they need a will, we automatically are going to do a power of attorney for them, okay? With a power of attorney, you need to make sure that you have 2 people identified that can make decisions for you if you're not able to make them for yourself. And you're going to have to ask yourself those hard questions. Do I want life-sustaining treatment performed on me? Do I want to be resuscitated? Do I want a feeding tube? Those are very hard questions that you have to think about, but it's better to have the conversation now as opposed to when you're trying to struggle and have them when other things are happening in front of you. So they're living in a house that their parents bought. The house was left to the children. I'm assuming there was a will. Okay. When someone dies with a will, it's called testate. When someone dies without a will, it's called intestate. If you die without a will, there are laws that say you have to follow this procedure based off of your lineage. So typically it goes to the spouse first and then to the children. And then if there are no children, it goes to the parents. Now that's if you don't have a will. But if you have a will, the will outline exactly what should happen. It might say I leave everything to my children to split equally. Okay. When you open up an estate, it allows you to transfer the deed legally. Now, some people know to get as far as opening up the estate, but they don't know what to do after that. That's where an attorney is going to come in, okay? Attorney is the person that's going to be able to draft up these legal documents that you need. Not only draft them properly, because the other thing I also see is people use like LegalZoom or some type of online something quickly to get something done, to get a quick claim deed. I'm not saying that these are terrible mechanisms to get your business handled, but there's probably a better way to do this. I want to call out one resource called the Birmingham Volunteer Lawyers. Okay, I know that they get a lot of calls about a lot of different subjects that pertain to things regarding probate, family issues, but the Birmingham Volunteer Lawyers is a great resource. Right now, I know that they've done a series of wills clinics across the county over the last, I want to say, 3 or 4 months that I've tried to participate in, that I have volunteered to participate in. But the Birmingham Volunteer Lawyers are a great resource. There are other resources out there that can try to help you with this, okay? So the will is here, and the will says that it goes to the children. Traditionally, what should happen is that a new deed is created that has the children's name on it. That deed is then filed in probate court, okay? And then you all are the owners of this new property. But it has to be legally done. Okay? Once you all file that new deed, what probably happened also is the parents probably were exempt from paying taxes. So no one's paying taxes because they don't have to. Every year, typically, they're going to send out a notice to have you confirm that nothing's changed and the people are still exempt that live in that home. Once you send something back to them saying they're no longer alive, that might prompt them to start charging taxes or to take some action or to reach out to see exactly what's going on or why the new owners aren't paying taxes. So that's a conversation. There are different departments we're working with: tax assessor, tax collector, probate. All of these different entities work together to make sure their records are in place. Okay? Citizens Access Portal is the website that you will look up to see your tax information. Okay, so it's a very good resource, and I'm not sure if people use that, but it's a very good resource. But technically what needs to occur is that the will be probated or the estate will be opened. The person that opened it, the executor that's named in the will, would get the administration or the authority to be able to handle the affairs of the estate. Handling affairs means that they might have to sell the home. They might have to dispose of property. There are different things for different people, okay? So there's no cookie cutter answer. But once you get that authority, it's usually incumbent upon the executor to open up a bank account, an estate account, especially if there are gonna be things that need to be done with the estate. If you're selling a home, things should not be going into your private account, okay? Anything from the estate should really be going to the estate account, coming in and out, because at the end of the day, the court also needs an inventory. They need documentation to see what has occurred in this estate since you asked for this authority to be able to handle the property and handle other issues. But basically the house will be transferred into the siblings' names. Then that will be filed in probate. Now what you all do from there is different, okay? Because unfortunately, death brings out the best and the worst in people. And we know that, we've seen that, so it's always a challenge to figure out what to do with assets. Sometimes a sibling wants to sell the house. Sometimes somebody wants to keep the house. Sometimes somebody wants to rent it out. So that's gonna be a conversation that you're gonna have to have. Now, when you make a will, you can't necessarily tell people what to do in the will. I see that a lot too. it's typically up to the person that receives that asset to figure out what they're going to do. You can't say, hey, I'm going to give you this house and you better sell it within 30 days. You can't do that. Okay. So once you change over that deed to the siblings' names, then from there it's going to be up to you all to figure out what's going to be next. Some people look at the value of the home and they might buy out the other siblings. Some people transfer it to a business and rent it out. I mean, that's where you're going to talk to a legal professional or a real estate professional to see what's going to be best for your situation. Because one of the things that I have seen a lot of is, unfortunately, older people die in homes and maybe no one takes up the responsibility to pay taxes or to maintain the home. And then you have investors that will come in and they will get pennies to the dollars off these homes. And then they will renovate them and put them on the market for 100 times what they were, okay? This is problematic in the Black communities because it's taken our legacy away from us. The people before us were the ones that worked their butts off so that we can have what we have. And so we have to really think about maintaining those things and those assets to continue to pass on. So those are just things that you're gonna think about once you transfer that deed into you and your siblings' names, what you're gonna do next. Again, I would definitely encourage you to speak to an attorney just to kind of get some more background, or a real estate professional. Because the other thing is that markets are doing different things across the county, okay? Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, good. So we're here today to talk about how the probate judge affects Jefferson County residents. Jefferson County gets 2 probate judges. Jefferson County gets 2 probate judges that are elected countywide, place 1 and place 2. There's no designation. It doesn't say place 1 has to be the person that does adoptions. It doesn't say place 2 is the person that does estates. Traditionally, place 1 is going to be the person that is the elections official. So remember we talked about probate judge administering the elections. They're going to sit on the elections commission. They're going to work with the clerk and the sheriff's office to make sure that our elections are administered fairly. But at the end of the day, you just need to elect 2 people in these positions. This is important to us because a lot of life instances run through probate. And it's a very exhaustive list. So I'm going to go through them and I'm going to give some examples just to make sure everybody understands. When you get married, you file your paperwork in probate, okay? That is a public record. So anybody can look up a marriage license. They can pull that down. When you change your name, that process goes through probate. When you open an estate or do any type of judicial recording, that is also probate. Commitment hearings are probate. Commitment hearings occur when someone has to go to the psychiatric ward at the hospital. This happens a lot, not just in our community, but across Jefferson County. The problem is that sometimes when this happens, there aren't a lot of resources to go to those that are lower disadvantaged economic status, okay? But anyone that has a commitment or is committed to the psychiatric ward, there has to be a hearing within so many days. That's their due process. What you'll see mostly is sometimes police may take someone to the psychiatric ward. Sometimes families take people to the psychiatric ward. But those commitment hearings have to occur, and at the hearing, the actual probate judge is there. There's an advocate that's there. There are people representing the person that's been committed, and there's an opportunity for family or whoever made the commitment to speak. Okay. Guardianships and conservatorships also occur at probate court. The probate judge is going to appoint a county conservator. Let's talk about conservators and guardians. Guardianship is over the person, okay? So most times I see this when my friend wants his child to go to school in a different district. Then they have somebody else be the guardian to use their address, okay? Guardianship is a more permanent way to have someone be the guardian of a child or a minor. And of course, our minors are 19 and younger because the age of majority in Alabama is 19. Most people will go to family court to try to do this. Family court can be modified. Probate court, the guardianship cannot be modified. I don't know if people understand that, okay? Most times, and I see this a lot, I do these cases. So these are called dependency cases, okay? That means a child is dependent and needs some care. Maybe they need care because a family member passed away. Maybe they need care because their family member can't take care of them. There are many reasons why a child can be found dependent. But at the end of the day, in family court, these proceedings can be modified, meaning they can have a custodian for the first 6 weeks and then go somewhere else after that. Now, typically with those types of cases, the courts are looking for families to put a dependent child with, okay? But again, just remember that those can be modified. In probate court, this is something that is done intentionally. There's an intentional guardianship done over a person. Sometimes if they're not a young person, it could also be a person that's incapacitated. They might also need a guardian over them. Guardian is over the person, conservatorship is over the money. So sometimes people are not able to handle their affairs. They might have a diagnosis like dementia. Someone has to be able to be, and I know sometimes with Social Security, people will find out how to change the payee or the payer or do that way, but there might be other financial issues that come along. And so you need a widespread net to be able to say, I can be over this person's finances. That's what a conservatorship does. Conservatorships happen at probate court, okay? So we got guardianships, conservatorships, commitment hearings, name changes, marriage licenses, judicial filings, also legitimacies. So sometimes there needs to be an issue legitimized. So it could be declaring if someone is a natural parent or not. There can be a lot of different instances with this, but legitimacies. Basically, like I said, everything at probate court is a public record. And so basically, when you do a legitimacy, you're letting the world know that I'm confirming that I belong to this person or this is my, whatever the case is. Okay, it can be a lot of different things. Let's see, I think that's all in probate court. Name changes, marriage licenses, commitment hearings, guardianships, conservatorships. We talked about commitment hearings and guardianships. Okay, were there any questions about the court itself and what it handles and what it does? Now, the court here is, we have 2 court systems, Birmingham and Bessemer, okay? There is a probate judge appointed by the 2 elected probate judges in Bessemer. So once 2 probate judges are elected, they're gonna appoint a judge in Bessemer. So basically, it's kind of 3 probate judges, but 2 are elected and 1 is appointed. And they will oversee the Bessemer court. Now, the probate courts themselves probably have the largest court staff because, as you know, when you walk in probate court, there are a lot of different things that you can do, okay? So I think they're in the upwards of maybe 70 court staff because the other thing that comes out of probate court is the elections. So there's also an elections office. You might not see it, but there's one. There is also a mental health office, mental health officials that work directly with probate judges. And so with that, it shows that this is something that everyone is gonna have some instance with, some type of interaction with. And if you don't, we gotta figure out how to get you there. I mean, just honestly, okay? One common misconception is that before people would do a will and they would try to file it in probate court. You don't have to do that. That's why you're alive. Some people will do a will while they're alive and then they'll file it in probate court, just so it's there. You don't necessarily have to do that. There are some people that have done that. You can do a check to see if a will's filed, but you don't have to do that. What I just suggest is that if you do a will, you make a copy of it, and you give copies to them people that might be takers in the will. Now, sometimes people they don't want to say nothing until they die, let them fight it out. I mean, I've heard all types of stuff. But you want to prepare your friends and family for this, because the thought of you passing away is not easy to deal with. Then the thought of them handling your affairs can't be easy as well, okay? So that's why probate court is very important to us, because it affects all of us, not just one of us. Was there a question? I saw you get up there.
They didn't write on their cards. So if you all have questions, I guess I can start with the pastors and their questions, and then you all write your questions, and I'll come and get those.
Yeah, my question has to do with elections. Okay. Say an alleged dispute over alleged wrongdoing in Jefferson County, and they have to certify the vote here in this county. Would that go through your office? I mean, and if so, how much power does the state legislature have over the decisions that you make?
That's a great question.
Does anybody need a card?
So quickly, the state legislature, they prescribe the laws. They basically tell us what probate judges should do. They also give us opportunities to, trying to see how would be the best way to put it. Basically say what should happen in our elections for the law's sake. The probate judge is the person that will work with the clerk to certify the votes, okay? Typically, when votes are certified, there's gonna be a representative from the different campaigns, observers can be there, but that is what that election commission basically handles, to make sure that the rules are in place for the election, and then when it's time to certify the votes, okay? A process that they do is called canvassing. Not canvassing door to door, but canvassing for the election, basically canvassing to certify the votes. Okay, so that will occur through the probate judge, and then the clerk, they will certify that. The sheriff works to make sure that the votes are handled correctly, that they get to where they need to get to. And so on election night, we'll get results, but they won't be certified until later for a few reasons. One, you still have absentee ballots that need to be counted. Then you still have provisional ballots that need to be affirmed. And we'll talk about that later as well. But the certification will not come on the day of the election. It'll come a few days later. Did that answer your question? Okay. Tell me how I can dig deeper. That's a good question. Technically, no. Technically, no. The state legislature prescribes the laws. So they tell us how to vote, when to vote, you know, that the probate judge or the elections official has to put these things in place and make sure they follow these rules. But technically, I don't know, and I would definitely double check, I don't see a way that they can invalidate our vote or what we've done.
Check. How long after one is deceased can you open an estate?
Good question. I believe it's 7 days, and I have to go back and look, but I believe it's 7 days.
So you can't wait 10 years and we found something and now we want to go back and...
Yes, and so that's another thing. Typically, after 2 years, if there's going to be you can't challenge after 2 years. So if you open an estate after 2 years, there can't be a challenge to it. So you want to usually open an estate quicker, sooner than later. I have one example. A family has come to me, and an estate was open, but they don't really know what was done, right? And so here we are 10 years later, we're trying to figure out, well, did they do this? Did they do that? Well, of course, it's a public record, you know, and I don't know who, you know, I think this attorney might have passed away. I don't know. Different things happen. But that's why it's so important to not only find an attorney that works in that field, that knows what they're doing, but to stay in communication with that attorney. You know, and it's always better to get things documented. I tell people that are looking for an attorney, because this happens to me, you know, calling is great, but it's better to have documentation. So email, text message, because you can't prove that you called someone.
All right, so we have a question here that starts with a statement. It's clear that you know a lot about probate court because you are an attorney that deals with probate. Are people who are not probate lawyers able to run for probate judge?
At the end of the day, people have the choice and the option to run for whatever they want to run for. This is a free country. Yes. It is incumbent upon the voters to do their due diligence, to make sure they ask questions to candidates and do their research to see who's the most qualified. But we live in America. Right? It's America the Beautiful. You have that right to vote. Someone died for me to have the right to vote. Someone died for me to have the right to run. And if that's what I want to do, then that's what I'm going to do. But the power lies with the voters. And so that's why it's very important to have conversations with candidates Go to their websites, see what their record is. Talk to people in probate court. I mean, if you don't want to do the research, talk to people in probate court. The staff is there from 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. They can tell you who they see, who they interact with, who they think will be a good probate judge, who has been coming around before this election came up, who they know, who treats them with respect. Because at the end of the day, the probate judge is not only going to work with just probate court. This probate judge is going to have to work with the sheriff's office, the clerk's office. They're going to have to engage diverse communities. Jefferson County looks like all of us in here, as well as a few more people. So we're different socioeconomic backgrounds, we're different races, we're different religions. You want someone with a temperament to be able to engage different groups, with the temperament to be able to be fair and impartial and unbiased. So I hope that answered the question.
All right, so I'm looking at some notes that I've been taking, but I do want to invite you all to write your questions down. I remember when we opened, I asked, did people know? What did they know about probate? And what was our answer? So we just learned everything in these couple of minutes that she has given us. If so, you are well on your way. So are you thinking about times when you lost relatives and you had all of these questions, you didn't know where to start, what to do? Are we thinking about those times? Or when you had custody for 6 weeks or 7 weeks of a little relative, not legal, they just been staying with you for 6 or 7 weeks and you need to make some legal moves but you don't know what to do? Have any of us been in those situations or have heard about those situations? I'm thinking from what I hear, that's what you'll be involved in.
Yes, guardianships, conservatorships. And the thing with guardianships too, when we talked about family law, sometimes people are looking for a quick, we need to happen quickly. We need this custody quickly because we're trying to get this child in school. With the guardianship, it's a little bit more intentional, okay? So if you do a guardianship, especially if it's gonna be over a child, you have to have both parents' permission. That's very important, okay? In the family court, most of the time, you just have to give notice because a judge is gonna make a determination on if the child actually is dependent and needs your care. So I'm trying to bring forth the differences. Do we kind of understand that there's a difference? I'm not saying that you won't get the parents' permission, but at least notice has to be given to both parents. And notice has to be given to both parents at the guardianship level, but they have to consent to that.
I see some confusion.
Yes. Yes, that happens a lot. Yes. Yes, that's a very, very good question. So what I do see a lot of times is that the young man just basically said he adopted his granddaughter, and this happens a lot, okay? Basically, you need to be able to have a guardian for her, because if something happens to you, the child can just basically go to the guardian. But you also need to make sure you have a will, because sometimes when we do those things, we don't think about what's going to happen when grandpa dies, and then the children don't want to give that grandchild that's legally your child now and can take like your other children. They might not want to give her her share. Right. Right. So yes, absolutely. You absolutely want to redo a will to include her in the will. Yes. But that's very common. A lot of times people want to just, help protect their grandchildren. I mean, that's common. It happens. And, when you go to probate court, you're honest about that, And so it's not like, oh, we don't want to do it. It happens. Because sometimes grandparents make better parents, Just what it is. Yes.
You spoke about conservatorship, and I don't think our community understands the role of probate court or the probate judge in conservatorship and how that affects the larger community,
Right.
the monies that are moved around
Right.
along that. So could you speak to the issues of conservatorship and how those things impact communities like Ensley, like Gate City, like Woodlawn, et cetera?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. I'm going to give you all a story first of all before we talk about it. I was doing some probate work, and I remember that I was appointed to be the GAL, which is the guardian ad litem, of an older lady who was in the hospital. And she didn't have any family, and her husband was also sick. So she was not able to pay her bills, do different things for herself. So the hospital filed a conservatorship. They filed for her to be able to try to get a conservatorship. So the hospital they're just treating the patient, right? They're doing what they can. But when we filed for the conservatorship, there was no one that could serve in that role. So the probate judge appointed the county conservator to be able to handle her finances, okay? Now, this is really important because the county conservator is going to be appointed where there's a void, where there's no one to appoint, or you might not be able to be bonded as a conservator. You might not have the qualifications to be a conservator, or you might just want to serve, whatever the case is, but someone has to be over your money. And so that's where the county conservator comes into play, okay? Typically, the probate judge will appoint a county conservator. They will handle business similar to that instance or others because, unfortunately, some people pass away or some people get sick and there's not family to take care of them, take care of their affairs. And so it's really important to know that because a county conservator, typically they might be from a law firm. It's assumed that they're going to be from a law firm because they're a lawyer that handles this time of work. But they don't work for free. They don't work for free, okay? So if they're having to set up Medicaid, they're having to set you up in the nursing home, someone has to pay the county conservator. And so that is why I think Pastor Stewart is saying that, these are the things we have to think about because we have to be able to protect our own. Now, I couldn't tell you if I win who the county conservator is. I'm not even there. Okay, that's just not something right now that I'm focused on. But when you're talking about picking county conservator, you want someone that has integrity. You want a firm that's dealt with these types of matters before, a firm that's not looking to gouge people. We don't want someone to charge $4,000 to set up Medicaid. That's ridiculous, right? And so you just want to think about those things. And those are things that we don't talk about a lot. But again, it's a public record, right? Who are county conservators? Whoever the county court has to pay to pay them to do something for someone, I'm not saying that public records are usually records that are already made. So I'm not saying that this is readily available, but these are things that the community just wouldn't know. Did that answer your question? And so, it is momentous to have someone like me running for this position because I'm a solo firm. It's just me and my law firm. Because it's going to be a big burden to handle. There's going to be a lot of spots to fill. There's going to be a lot of background that has to go into the decisions that has to be made for us to have a solid foundation. And I'm a firm believer that a good foundation helps create success, right? So how you start is how you're going to finish. And so you have to think about those things because you want someone that is going to be your probate judge that can engage with small firms, medium-sized firms, large firms, that supported those different types of firms, that knows what those firms do, where their specialties lie, who engage with the members of the firm. The other thing, yes, the firm has attorneys representing it, but who are the people that work at the firm, right? Who's drafting pleadings? Who's in the mailroom? you know? So you gotta kind of go a little bit beyond what you think you see, because it takes everyone to make this successful. It's gonna take everyone at probate court to pull together to make a successful court. So hopefully that answered your questions. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. That's a great question. I'm running for a lot of different reasons. The first reason is that growing up, I was always exposed to the disenfranchisement of Black and brown people. And I believe probate court is another way that we've been disenfranchised. We don't know about it. We don't know how to work the court. We don't know what to do. So when I became an attorney, one of the first things I did was start speaking to churches and other groups about why it's important to have a will and a power of attorney. I did not know I was gonna run for probate judge. It was just something passionate to me, okay? Passionate to me because my family comes from rural Alabama, Beatrice and McIntosh. Lots of land, lots of resources. But I grew up hearing stories about how we lost the land because we didn't pay taxes, or somebody did a double deed and we didn't even know we were supposed to go to court. We just didn't know. And I don't think that should ever happen to anyone, especially anyone that looks like me, ever again, okay? The next thing is that I've been registering people to vote since I could talk. I've been a member of the NAACP since I was born. I have been fighting for injustice along any environmental, criminal, whatever it is, for a very long time. I believe firmly that the vote is the best way for us to voice what we need and what we want. And that has to be protected at all costs. I initially went to law school because before I was an attorney, I did a lot of campaign and election work. And I said, I gotta go to law school because I wanna be a higher up. I need to be able to make more decisions. But getting to law school and understanding that I can not only empower myself, but empower others, that was liberating. And so now being in a position when I can not only educate and expose people to the importance of preparing for their death, but also make sure I protect the vote and motivate people to vote. That's the other thing. The turnout in Birmingham and Alabama, period, it's low among Democrats. And we need some type of motivation, some type of excitement, some type of notice. So being able to have an influence in those two realms, that is why this is the perfect job for me. And I thank you for asking me that.
Thank you. I have an estate that includes intangible assets like cryptocurrency, intellectual property, and stocks.
That's a lot.
This creates a challenge in valuation and distribution. How can a probate judge help with this issue?
So unfortunately, as a probate judge, all I'm gonna be able to do is to hear the case on its merits and make a decision when it comes to trial. The real work from that is gonna be going into getting an attorney that's well-versed into understanding how to value those assets.
Like a very modern today type thing. Cryptocurrency, what
Yes.
is that?
Yes.
Intellectual property, so these are your ideas.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a loaded question. Thank you for asking it.
Yeah, and one thing too, when I should bring this up, sometimes I don't think we think about what's supposed to happen with our intellectual property when we die, right? I know painters and artists that don't think about those things, but they have to protect their future also. So that's just something to think about also. You know, it might not be a big, booming business, but you never know what can happen when you pass away.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's
so,
when it could blow up.
Yes, that's usually when it does blow up.
Yeah.
And so we see that all the time. So that's another protection. But unfortunately, all I will be able to do as a probate judge is just to listen to the case on the merits and say, okay, this is what should happen following the law. I'm not going to be able to say, okay, this is what it should be based, maybe a standard of evaluation, but a lot of that hopefully can be sifted out before you get to me.
Okay.
Because what we don't want is we don't want judges to make a decision about our assets. That's what we don't want to happen. So hopefully I answered that question.
I have a two-part question. The first part is, as a sole proprietor, how has that prepared you for what you're going to do? The second part is that recently we had the Place 1 probate judge, Judge Naftel, to take away 13 individuals who had not been trained on how to fill out the application properly. And they were disqualified. So now we have no one on the ballot for treasurer. We've lost school board seats. How, as the presiding judge in Place 1, will you make sure that there are trainings and workshops available for candidates prior to their being certified?
Great question.
While she prepares to answer that question, he didn't write it down because he would have still been writing. Okay, so I'm being fair. That was a good question. I'm gonna keep you in mind for when we need a dissertation or something written out.
Okay, two-part question. First of all, how has a solo proprietor or a solo practice firm, how has that prepared me for working with in this capacity? So as a solo practice attorney, I've had to be very resourceful. Because sometimes, you know, I don't know what to do, but I gotta figure it out. And I have to go to people that can help me figure it out. And that's just where we are. I've had a lot of on-the-job training, but I've also met a lot of challenges that come with success. Because if you don't know how to articulate your needs and what you need, you're not gonna be able to get help from them. As a solo practitioner, I've also had to be flexible with diverse groups. You know, sometimes a big firm, if they have this type of candidate or this type of client, they might send in this person because they're great with that group of people. Well, I've had to be able to engage with all types of people because it's only one attorney, so I can't pick someone else to go talk to them. And then the level of communication. I know what clients expect when they want services from a law firm. And that's really important. When you're paying for a professional service, you want a response, you want an update. There are things that you have expectations that you're looking for. So I believe that those are some things that have prepared me, but nonetheless, just I guess the hustle and bustle. Because as a solo practitioner, if I don't work, I don't eat, right? And so I'm passionate about making sure not only that I eat, but the people that I work with also eat. So that's driven me to be able to make sure that I have a demeanor and an approach to my clients that make them want to come back and get other clients. And that's what it's about. The probate court customer service is, you know, one of the biggest things I hear about. Someone tries to go do something and someone was rude or they didn't know what to do. And at the probate court, they can't give legal advice. So if you ask them 10 different ways the same question, they can't tell you what you should do. And so sometimes I think that creates frustration. But what we have to make sure of is that we understand de-escalation methods and we understand cultural competency. Because we're all different. We have different cultures. And sometimes people come from outside the state trying to handle their parents' affairs. So having that information and knowing what that looks like, because I'm not originally from Alabama. My roots are here, but I'm not originally from here. So understanding that people come from outside our state to handle business is very important. It's great to be, it's not about where you're from, it's about where you're at. Right? And so I've had a great opportunity to engage people. I don't know if people know this, but before I became an attorney, I actually was a server and a bartender. And people are like, well, why does that matter? Because people don't play about their food. They don't play about that. And if they want you to communicate with them, how long is my food gonna take? You know, what's the best thing on the menu? Craft something special for them. So that has prepared me for working with clients and engaging with clients and reading the room. It's very important. The second question was about the 13 candidates. Now let me say this. I am the vice chair of Minority Affairs for the Jefferson County Democratic Party. I am not at liberty to speak on behalf of our party about what happened. But what I will say is, I think we all learn from this situation. Okay, and for those that don't know what happened, there were 13 candidates that qualified that were removed from the ballot because they did not complete a statement of economic interest by a certain deadline. I cannot stand up here and say who's to blame, but I do think that in my role as a probate judge, I will also have to assume the role as a leader in the party to help cultivate and engage candidates and prepare them for what's to come. That's all I can do. I've worked with the Alabama Democratic Party, I've worked with the Ohio Democratic Party, and I've seen some differences there. I've seen some things that went great and some things that didn't go so great. But I think what it's gonna take is just a varied experience to come in and make sure that we have an even playing field for all. Because another question I was asked was, can you run for probate judge if you haven't done probate? Anybody should be able to run for whatever they want to run for. But they should have the tools that they need to know what needs to be done if they're gonna be a candidate. And that's pretty much, I feel like that's about preparing, just like probate. You need to be prepared. You can make the decision tomorrow that you want to run, but you should be able to access exactly what needs to happen, the requirements, so that you don't have to go through so many channels or ask this person. Those things should be readily available. And just to clarify, that decision was made by the probate judge in conjunction with the Secretary of State's office and the Election Commission. So the probate judge has to work with different entities to make sure the laws are followed. Now, they might have to make hard decisions, don't get me wrong, but there are a few other people involved in that part of what's happening. And again, I can't speak to what's going on because I don't know everything. I have been focused on my race, but what I do know is that in the past, if anyone has come to me and said that they want to run, I have been very supportive because I'm a good Democrat.
All right. Everybody put your hands together for our presenter, Attorney Joy Travis. Have you learned? Have you been empowered and educated? Yes? Okay.
I got one more thing.
Yes.
Before you kick me off.
Yes.
We didn't talk about voting, so really quickly, you all know the election is March 5th, okay? That's our primary election. You're basically gonna pick your Democratic candidates that will go on to the November election. What I want you all to remember is just a few things. First of all, you can go to the courthouse right now and vote. Please do it, okay? Go to Bessemer or Birmingham, downtown, go to the courthouse and vote. Your vote will be counted just like everyone else's. There are measures in place to try to get some weekend voting. I don't know if we're gonna do that, but right now I know you can go to the courthouse and vote. The other thing I do have is I bought a sample ballot. Because what I do know is that sometimes when people get in there, it can be very intimidating with all these names and you haven't had a chance to go through it, okay? So because our pastors are nonpartisan, I can't say vote for me, but I'm gonna be one of the first races that you see under the president. I'll say that, okay? But I would like people to please take one. We made a few copies. Take a copy of it, send it to people, because this is very important. The other thing is that if you're not able to go to the polling location and vote on election day or before, you can request your absentee ballot application. I suggest this to people that may be caregivers, that know caregivers. I mean, this is the norm in nursing homes right now. You're applying for your absentee ballot application, they're gonna mail the ballot to you, and you have to get that ballot back at a certain time. So I will make sure that all of our pastors have absentee ballot applications in their churches, and whoever would like them. You also need to make sure your registration is up to date. Check your registration. Don't just assume that you're already registered, because you might think you're registered and it could have been some type of mistake and your name was removed because you didn't vote at the last election, which was a special election, and nah. But we want to protect the vote, right? We don't care what happened before. Let's just move forward protecting our vote. The voter registration deadline, I believe, is February 19th. February 19th, okay? So if you've changed your name, if you've moved, if you've not voted in the last election, you need to re-register. That is incumbent upon us, and make sure everyone in our families are registered to vote, because that's what's gonna equate to turnout. You don't wanna go to the polling location that you've been going to for 30 years, and your name isn't on there, then you get a provisional ballot, and then it still doesn't count. That's a lot of work that you have to do and our elections officials, and it's not fair, okay? So please, please, please check your registration. You can check your registration at my website, trustintravis.com. You can check it at the Secretary of State's website. But please check your, and check your friends and make sure. You know, go ahead right now today, it's 30 days from the election. Start a little text draft and say, hey friend, just making sure you went to go register to vote today. Because on March 5th, just start sending it out that morning. Because again, it is about who you vote for, but it's about also just turning up at the polls, okay? February 19th. Yes. No, it's just one-sided. Now, when you go to the polling location, it may be two-sided. It's very small, it is. Yes, I will work with my friends to try to see if we can do that. The other thing I want you to pay, that's a great question. The other thing I want you to pay attention to is there are some amendments on here as well. Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. I would like to distribute this to my congregation. Okay. But I know I got a lot of seasoned saints. Yes, vintage saints, yes. I can't see it. I know they ain't gonna be. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll probably just try to take each of those statewide amendments. And you know, Greater Birmingham Ministries, they usually do a very good job of creating just a voter guide and explaining the different amendments. But what my team will do is we will definitely take each of the amendments and blow them up so maybe they're on one page. But we will do that. Also, I think the Circuit Clerk, Jackie Anderson-Smith, has also been going around trying to educate about these amendments as well. Because we have, I mean, they're just as important as the people you're voting for. So yes, definitely.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Pastors, thank you for hosting us. I normally have a platform where we do get into the amendment, so we'll let y'all know when we do that. We'll do it, because that's always the important part that we don't know. Just go in there and have no knowledge of what that is, so we will do that, and people can just listen and take notes, and then you'll be able to go in. You'll know what you're doing. So thank you all for having me tonight. Thank you for being attentive. Thank you for asking great questions, and take this information back into your neighborhoods and to your households. Yeah, have a good night.
All right, thank you so much. Will y'all just give everybody a big hand real quick? Let me say one or two quick things. Thank you to Dr. Tyree Anderson and the wonderful people here at the historic First Baptist of Ensley. Let me also thank Pastor Perry Macon, Pastor Albert Bright Jr., Pastor Matthew V. Johnson, Pastor Ramon Billingsley, and Pastor Jeffrey Black for heeding our call to call the church, especially Black church, back to our whole roots of ministering to the whole person. This is just the first of what we believe will be many conversations around pertinent issues. So please be much watchful, be very watchful. This is the first of conversations that you will hear. We want to be good stewards of your time, so thank you for coming out. Thank you for your questions. There's a light reception in the fellowship hall. I know you got more questions, Miss Donna. I know you got more questions, Reverend Littlejohn. I know you got more questions. All you folk that I don't know, can't call your name. I know I saw another pastor walk in. I saw you walk in. I know you got questions. So please, please, please. Thank you, Lady Wu, for being our dynamic moderator on today. Let's stand. Bless us now, O God, dismissing us only from this place, but never from your presence. Help us to do the things that bring forth your justice and your righteousness in the earth. In your Son, our Savior, Jesus' name. Amen. Go in peace, everybody. Have a great night. Again, refreshments in the fellowship hall. You'll be able to talk more with Attorney Travers in that space.